The city bowed to Ariana Vale. Glass towers reflected her image as her car slid through evening traffic, composed, immaculate, untouchable. Headlines loved her, rivals feared her, boards listened when she spoke. She had built her empire with precision and refusal, brick by ruthless brick. She did not notice the black sedan 2 cars back. It had been there all week. The car stopped. Her door opened, and the world narrowed. Lucas Kane stood framed by the city lights, tall, solid, immovable. A human statue carved from discipline and restraint. His suit was perfectly cut, but it didn't hide what nature had shaped with intent. Broad shoulders, a powerful chest, arms corded with strength, the suggestion of a six-pack beneath crisp fabric that looked strained by his presence alone. Men nearby noticed him instantly. Some stared, some stiffened. One executive openly scoffed, then shut his mouth when Lucas's gaze flicked his way, cool, assessing, unbothered. Ariana felt him before she looked at him. His hand hovered at the door, not touching her, not daring to. He never touched unless necessary. That was the rule, that was the job. "Ms. Vale," he said, voice low, steady, respectful. Her name sounded different coming from him, weighted, controlled. "Mr. Kane," she replied, stepping out of the car. For one dangerous second, her heel caught on the pavement. Lucas moved without thought. His hand closed around her waist, firm, precise, protective. His body shielded hers from the street, heat bleeding through fabric, strength undeniable. She inhaled sharply, fingers curling instinctively into the front of his suit. The contact lasted less than a heartbeat. He released her immediately. "I apologize," he said, already stepping back, professionalism snapping into place like armor. But Ariana's pulse refused to calm. She straightened her jacket, lifting her chin. "You did your job." "Yes, ma'am." The word ma'am should have sounded distant. Instead, it landed heavy in her chest. As they walked toward the building, she was acutely aware of him at her side. Not beside her, not behind her, but close enough that she felt contained, protected, owned by proximity alone. Across the street, behind tinted glass, a man watched. He had memorized her routine, the angle of her walk, the way she tilted her head when she listened. He watched the new man, too, the way he moved, the way he touched her, the way she reacted. Jealousy curdled into something darker. Inside the building, Ariana entered the elevator. Lucas followed, filling the small space with quiet dominance. The doors slid shut. Silence. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls, calm, powerful, controlled. But her eyes betrayed her, flicking to his reflection without permission. He noticed. Of course he did. Their gazes met for half a second too long. Something dangerous stirred between them, unspoken, restrained, undeniable. Lucas looked away first. Outside, the stalker smiled. The game had begun. 5 years, that was how long Lucas Kane had been in Ariana Vale's orbit. 5 years of opening her door before she reached for the handle. 5 years of knowing when she'd slept poorly by the tightness in her jaw. 5 years of learning her silences, the productive ones, the dangerous ones, the ones that meant she was about to burn an empire to the ground. He knew her better than anyone, maybe better than she knew herself. The boardroom buzzed with power and ego, but Lucas barely registered it. His attention was where it always was, on her, on the subtle shifts in her posture as the meeting dragged on, on the way her fingers tapped once, twice, then stilled when a man on the far end of the table tried to interrupt her. That tap meant irritation. The stillness meant execution. Ariana didn't raise her voice. She never did. She dismantled him calmly, surgically, leaving nothing behind but silence and grudging respect. Lucas watched the familiar rhythm of it with quiet pride. She thrived here, but she paid for it later. He knew that too. When the meeting ended, he moved before she stood, already at her side, not touching, never touching unless necessary. People noticed him, always did. Men sized him up, women lingered a little too long. He ignored it all. His focus narrowed to her heels on marble, her breath, her scent, clean, expensive, unmistakably her. "Car's ready," he murmured. She glanced up at him, and for a fleeting second, the steel slipped. Fatigue lived in her eyes today. He clocked it instantly. You didn't eat, he said quietly as they walked. Her brow creased. I had coffee. That's not food. A corner of her mouth lifted. You sound like my conscience. I've been accused of worse. They reached the car. He opened the door. She paused, not because she needed help, but because she always paused, a habit she didn't even realize she had. Lucas waited, steady as stone, until she stepped inside. He closed the door gently. Inside the car, the city blurred past in muted colors. Ariana loosened her jacket, exhaling slowly. Lucas adjusted the temperature without looking. She liked it cooler when she was thinking. You remembered, she said. I always do. She studied him in the mirror, his hands on the wheel, strong, veined, controlled. Those hands had pulled her from crowds, shielded her from threats, steadied her when exhaustion threatened to take her down in private hallways. Do you ever get tired of knowing me so well? She asked softly. His grip tightened, just a fraction. No. The answer was immediate, absolute. Silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. He knew when to let it linger. He also knew when to break it. There's something off, he said. Her gaze sharpened. Off how? I can't place it yet. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. But I feel it. Ariana trusted that instinct. She always had. Lucas noticed patterns others missed. Cars that appeared too often. Shadows that lingered too long. Eyes that watched when they thought no one noticed. Across the street, behind darkened glass, someone watched the familiar ritual unfold. The pause, the door, the way she leaned back like she was safe. The way she trusted him. Jealousy twisted into something ugly. Inside the car, Ariana crossed her legs slowly. Lucas didn't look, but he felt it. He always felt her. Her presence pressed against his discipline, day after day, year after year. 5 years of restraint. 5 years of wanting what he would never take. The car moved forward, unaware it was being followed again. And for the first time since he'd sworn to protect her, Lucas Kane felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Concern. Not for her safety. For what would happen when the silence watching them decided to step closer. Lucas Kane believed in patterns. They were what kept people alive. The car rolled smoothly through traffic, but his attention was already 2 steps ahead. Mirrors, reflections, gaps between vehicles. Ariana scrolled through emails beside him, calm, composed, unaware of how closely he tracked the world for her. The same black sedan appeared again, 2 car lengths back. Same distance as yesterday. Same patience. Lucas didn't react. He never reacted too early. Ariana tilted her head slightly. You're quiet. I'm thinking. That usually means trouble. He glanced at her reflection. Only for other people. She huffed a soft laugh and went back to her screen, trusting him without question. That trust sat heavy in his chest. It always had. 5 years ago, she'd hired him because he was efficient. 3 years ago, she'd kept him because he was loyal. Somewhere along the way, he'd become essential. He knew the exact moment her migraines began, the way she pressed 2 fingers behind her ear. He knew when she was lying to herself by the speed of her walk. He knew she drank water only when reminded. He knew she slept curled slightly to the left on flights, pretending she wasn't exhausted. He knew her, and someone else was learning her too. The car pulled into the underground garage. Lucas exited first, scanning, positioning himself automatically between her and the open space. Ariana followed, heels clicking, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, schedule it, she said sharply. No, I don't care what he thinks. She ended the call and sighed. Men who confuse volume with authority exhaust me. Lucas allowed himself the faintest smile. You dismantled him in under 3 minutes. She arched a brow. You timed it? I always time you. Her steps slowed. She looked at him then, not as her employee, not as her protection, but as the man who had seen every version of her and never flinched. That's unsettling, she said lightly. It's my job. They entered the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing them in silence and steel. Ariana leaned back against the mirrored wall, loosening her collar. Lucas stood close, not touching, never touching, but near enough that he could feel the heat of her body, the subtle change in her breathing. You're tense, she said. So are you. She studied his face, searching. Is this about the off feeling? Yes. The elevator hummed upward. I don't like things I can't see, she murmured. Lucas's jaw tightened. Neither do I. Above them, on the street level, a man lowered his binoculars and smiled slowly. He had noticed the way the big one watched everything, the way Ariana leaned toward him without realizing it, the way she trusted his presence like armor. That would make this sweeter. The elevator chimed, the doors opened. Lucas stepped out first, scanning the corridor. Clear, for now. As Ariana followed, her arm brushed his. Just barely. A static shock of awareness raced up his spine. He stopped himself from reaching out, from steadying her, from pulling her closer, from doing the thousand things his body wanted and his discipline forbade. Lucas, she said quietly. He turned. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. 5 years of silence pressed, heavy, charged, dangerous. Yes, Miss Vale? Her lips parted, then closed. Nothing, she said finally. Thank you. He nodded, professional mask sliding back into place. But as they walked on, Lucas felt it clearly now. They weren't just being watched, they were being studied. And whoever it was knew one undeniable truth. To get to Ariana Vale, you went through Lucas Kane. Lucas Kane didn't panic, not outwardly, panic was for amateurs. But the tight line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, betrayed his thoughts to no one but himself. The black sedan had been following Ariana for 3 days now. Always 2 cars back, always patient, always silent, always watching. He knew it wasn't random. Whoever it was knew her schedule, her preferences, her habits. And Lucas Kane knew one hard truth. If he didn't act, this could end very badly. By evening, the office was emptying. Ariana was still buried in files, her heels dangling above the floor as she typed furiously. He stood behind her desk, one hand on the back of her chair. The other hovered near the secure exit plan he had memorized. Change of plans, he said quietly, breaking the hum of the air conditioner. She looked up, tired, frustrated, but curious. What kind of change? Your routine, starting tonight. Nothing predictable, alternate routes, alternate entrances. We're cutting patterns anyone could track. She blinked at him. We've done this for years. It's disruptive. It's necessary, he said firmly. And it's temporary, until I know who's watching. Her shoulders stiffened, the familiar spark of defiance igniting. I don't like being told what to do by my assistant. He didn't flinch. I'm not your assistant right now, I'm your shield, and shields sometimes have to make decisions you won't like. She stared at him. For 5 years he had worked at her side, following her rules, anticipating her every need without stepping over the line. But this was different. He was taking control. She wanted to protest, she wanted to assert authority. But the intensity in his gaze held her back. Deep down, she knew he was right. Fine, she said after a long pause. But I'm not going quietly. Lucas allowed a shadow of a smile. I wouldn't expect you to. By the time they left the office, nothing looked familiar. The exit was a stairwell she had never used. The car was parked at the far end of the lot, engine running, tinted windows glinting in the streetlights. The route to her penthouse was circuitous, twisting through side streets and alleys, a map only Lucas could navigate without hesitation. She glanced at him through the rearview mirror. This feels different. It is different, he said simply. And it has to be. Until we know who's following you, I control every variable. Ariana swallowed. She had spent years controlling everything in her life. Businesses, meetings, mergers, headlines. But for the first time, she felt powerless. And yet, in the same moment, utterly safe. Lucas noticed the subtle tension in her hand on the console, the way her gaze flicked to the side mirrors, scanning for threats. He knew her like that. He knew her patterns, her habits, her instincts. She had no idea how much of herself he had memorized, and now, all of it mattered. Outside, in the shadows, the black sedan slowed to keep pace with the new, unpredictable route. Whoever it was had just realized their game had changed. Lucas's knuckles tightened on the wheel. Let them try, he murmured, more to himself than to her. They'll never catch her, not while I'm here. And for the first time in years, he didn't just want to protect her. He wanted to keep everything, her life, her heart, her presence, safe from every threat, seen and unseen. Even if it meant changing everything he had built around her, including the fragile barrier between them. The next few days were a whirlwind of altered schedules, hidden routes, and unpredictable appearances. Ariana Vale felt like she was navigating someone else's life, her own life. But Lucas Kane moved through it all with effortless control. Every entrance, every exit, every car ride was mapped and remapped. He had eyes on her constantly, reading her moods, her micro-expressions, even the way she curled her fingers around the steering wheel when frustrated. He knew her, better than anyone else, maybe better than she knew herself, and that knowledge came with a price. The first close call happened on a rain-slicked street. Ariana's heels clicked faster than usual as they exited a side parking garage. The black sedan had slipped into view, a shadow too persistent to ignore. Lucas's body shifted instinctively, moving between her and the threat. "Change direction," he commanded quietly. She followed without question, breath quickening, not from the rain, not from the city lights, but from the intensity radiating off him. Every movement he made was deliberate, precise, protective. The heat of his presence pressed into her, and for a moment she imagined what it would feel like if that barrier he always maintained, the one that separated his hands from her, was gone. But it wasn't. Not yet. They doubled back through narrow alleys, Lucas's body perfectly poised to intercept any danger. His suit clung to him, outlining the hard planes of muscle she had learned to notice over 5 years, the shoulders that could shield her, the chest that could absorb a blow, the sculpted arms that could carry her out of danger without hesitation. And yet the restraint in his posture was undeniable. He wanted to reach for her, to pull her close and hold her when fear made her small. But he didn't. He couldn't. "You're everywhere," she whispered as they slipped back onto a hidden street, heart racing. "I have to be," he said simply, eyes scanning every reflection, every shadow. "Always." A beat passed, then another. She started, then stopped. Words were useless. Desire simmered, unspoken, impossible to act on. She could feel it in the way he shifted when she leaned slightly too close, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the heat radiating off him even through fabric. Lucas's attention snapped back outward as the sedan disappeared from view. He exhaled softly, tension flowing out of him, but only enough to maintain his control. "You're safe," he murmured, almost to himself, almost as a promise. "I know," she said, but her voice betrayed her. She didn't just know she was safe. She felt the safety and the closeness, and something more dangerous, something she had spent 5 years denying herself. The rain glistened on the streets, reflecting the city lights. Lucas kept his hands on the wheel, but she felt them in her mind. Every line, every curve, every powerful sinew. The heat of him pressed against her imagination, daring her to acknowledge it. And she did. Her pulse throbbed in time with the rhythm of her fear, her adrenaline, and the undeniable aching tension between them. Lucas glanced at her briefly, just enough for her to catch the hard edge in his eyes, the promise in his restraint. "Let's go," he said quietly, "and stay close." Ariana swallowed, realizing with a mixture of awe and frustration that she already had. The game had changed, and now the line between protection and desire was thinner than ever. The penthouse was quieter than usual, too quiet. Ariana sat at her desk, staring at spreadsheets, her coffee cooling untouched. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, scanning the room, then the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He had changed everything. Routes, entrances, schedules, even her personal habits. Every day, she followed a pattern that only he could navigate safely. And tonight, she felt it, his presence, closer than normal. "Why are you standing there?" she asked, voice soft but tinged with awareness. He didn't move. Not away, not closer, just there. Solid, protective, magnetic. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said. "I'm never alone," she shot back lightly, though her fingers twitched over the keyboard, a hint of unease betraying her words. Lucas's eyes narrowed subtly. He didn't need her to explain. He could read her like an open book. 5 years of study, The way her brow creased, the tension in her shoulders, the slight curve of her lips when she was amused or irritated, had trained him to notice everything. And now, in the dim glow of the city lights, every subtle cue told him the stalker had escalated. "You need to stop working," he said, moving closer, not touching, but close enough that the warmth from his body brushed her awareness. The scent of his cologne, sharp and clean, filled the room. Ariana's pulse caught. He was always imposing, but tonight felt different. He wasn't just guarding her, he was pressing against the edges of her control, reminding her, silently, dangerously, of the years they had spent side by side. The years he had known every hidden corner of her mind, every habit, every secret weakness. "And if I don't?" she asked, voice steadier than she felt. "You will," he said simply. There was no command, no threat, just an undeniable certainty. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something dangerous coil low in her stomach. Lucas Kane, broad, sculpted, impossible, was the only constant in her life. The one man who had always been there, steady, silent, unshakable. He knew her better than she knew herself. Tonight, in the dim light of the penthouse, that knowledge carried weight, power, desire. He moved a fraction closer, and she didn't step back. Her body betrayed her, shifting ever so slightly toward him. He noticed, of course. He always noticed. 5 years of attention, of study, of silent devotion, left him attuned to the smallest shifts, her breath catching, her gaze lingering, her heartbeat just a fraction faster. "Lucas?" she whispered. "Yes?" His voice was low, steady, but the tension underlying it was unmistakable. "The routines, everything. You've changed it all. For me." "Yes," he said. "Because someone is watching, and because I can't afford to lose you." Her stomach twisted, not from fear, not entirely, but from the heat radiating off him, from the control he wielded so effortlessly, from the knowledge that he had always been near, always protective, always restrained, but always aware of her, every nuance of her being. And now, with the stalker pressing closer in the shadows, they were forced into proximity that felt both professional and impossibly intimate. Lucas's hand brushed the edge of her desk, close enough to touch but not crossing the line. Close enough to remind her that 5 years of unspoken restraint could snap at any second. Outside, the city hummed, and somewhere, watching, the stalker grinned, unaware that the walls around Ariana had just grown almost impossible to penetrate. Inside, the line between protection and desire thinned dangerously, and neither of them could ignore it any longer. Ariana had always been unshakable. Boardrooms bent to her will, contracts signed with a flick of her pen, empires built under her sharp, unwavering gaze. But tonight, alone in the penthouse with Lucas Kane nearby, something in her world felt precarious. It started with the text, anonymous, precise, menacing. "I know your patterns. You can't hide from me. I will find you. I will have you." Her fingers froze over her phone. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear of exposure, but from the suffocating awareness that someone had been watching for weeks, tracking her, learning her, threatening everything she had worked for. Lucas noticed instantly. 5 years of studying her gave him insight into every subtle change, every micro shift in posture, every shallow breath, the flicker in her eyes when control faltered. "Show me," he said quietly. His voice was calm, steady, but layered with steel. She handed him the phone, watching the way his fingers brushed hers. Strong, controlled, careful. His touch was never careless, never intrusive, but it sent a jolt of awareness through her chest. A warning, a promise, a spark. He read the message once, twice, scanning the timestamp, the metadata, the sender pattern. Then he looked up. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, met hers. "They're closer," he said simply. Ariana's defenses faltered. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to crumble just slightly. Her shoulders sagged, exhaustion and fear threatening to overtake her calm facade. Lucas was instantly at her side, closer than he had ever been outside of necessary protection. His body, sculpted and commanding, formed a shield without touching her, yet the heat of his presence pressed into her awareness. She felt it in every nerve, in every pulse. "You're safe," he murmured. I I know," she said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. He stepped even closer, subtly adjusting his position so that he was between her and the windows, between her and any unseen threat outside. The penthouse suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. Every movement, every breath, every exhalation carried weight. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. Her chest tightened. She had always faced the world alone, but not tonight. Tonight, the reality of her vulnerability, paired with his unwavering presence, pressed against her control like a tide threatening to pull her under, and she wanted it. Not the fear, not the danger, but him. The thought hit her like lightning. She shouldn't want him. He was her assistant, her bodyguard, her constant shadow, but for the first time she imagined what it would feel like if the restraint slipped. Lucas's hand brushed hers, not intentional, not fully, just enough that electricity sparked in her veins. He noticed, of course. He always noticed. His gaze softened slightly, though the steel behind it remained. "We'll get through this," he said. "I won't let anyone touch you." Ariana's breath hitched. His words were not just reassurance. They were a vow, an unspoken promise, and something more. Something that thrummed beneath the surface of their years together. Outside, the city remained oblivious, the shadows moving quietly. But inside, the air was thick with tension, protective, dangerous, and unbearably intimate. Tonight, she had cracked, and he had been the only one to catch her. The city outside glittered innocently, unaware of the danger lurking in its shadows. Inside the penthouse, every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock, the faint shuffle of Lucas's boots across the floor. Ariana sat near the window, heart still racing from the anonymous messages, feeling exposed despite the fortress around her. Lucas stood a few feet behind her, eyes scanning, posture taut, every muscle ready to react. He had changed everything for her, routes, routines, schedules, yet the stalker had grown bolder. "They're watching again," Lucas said quietly, not looking at her. His gaze swept the city through the tinted glass, calculating, alert. She shivered, not entirely from fear. His presence pressed into her, magnetic and impossible to ignore. She felt the weight of him behind her, tall, broad, impossibly sculpted. A living statue of control and restraint. Every movement he made was deliberate, measured, and yet it stirred something inside her she had spent years denying. "Lucas," she whispered, barely audible. He turned just enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. His eyes softened, but his body remained a wall of steel. "Yes? I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice trembling. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel vulnerable, to admit the fear she usually masked with authority. He stepped closer, not touching her but close enough that she felt every contour of him. The broad shoulders, the tight abs, the power restrained behind disciplined control. She could feel his awareness of her in every inch of the space between them. "You do what you always do," he said softly. "Trust me. Let me handle this." A part of her wanted to lean into him, to let the barrier fall. She had felt this tension before, 5 years of shared space, of him anticipating her every need, but tonight, danger made it sharper, more urgent, and far more intimate. The stalker's shadow moved past the streetlights, closer than ever, unseen but palpably present. Lucas's hand hovered near her back instinctively, ready to act in an instant. She felt the pulse of his energy, controlled, restrained, magnetic, every fiber of him coiled like a predator protecting its territory. "You're too close," she said breathlessly, though she didn't step back. He smirked faintly, knowing she meant more than just physical distance. "I've always been close," he replied. "You just never noticed." Her chest tightened. Every nerve in her body screamed at her, at him, at the forbidden heat rising between them. The line between professional and personal blurred in the dim light. She wanted to pull away, but she couldn't. She wanted him even as she knew she shouldn't. Lucas shifted slightly, guiding her subtly behind a low wall near the window, keeping her out of the line of sight from the street below. His body moved with precision, protective instinct radiating from him in waves. He smelled of leather, discipline, and something uniquely Lucas, clean, commanding, irresistible. She pressed back slightly against him, not touching, not daring to, but close enough to feel the heat radiating from his chest, to sense the tension in every movement he made. "Don't be afraid," he murmured. His voice brushed against her ear, low, intimate, and impossible to ignore. "I'm not," she began, but stopped. She was afraid. Afraid of the stalker. Afraid of the storm of desire Lucas stirred within her. Afraid of what 5 years of silent longing could do if finally unleashed. Lucas didn't speak again. He didn't need to. His body, his energy, his very presence said everything. He was there, he was unwavering, and he would protect her at all costs. Outside, the stalker lingered, watching. Inside, the lines between protection, desire, and temptation had already begun to blur, and neither of them could ignore it any longer. The penthouse was silent in a way that made Ariana uneasy. Not peaceful, not calm, alert. The kind of quiet that came before something went wrong. Lucas stood near the security panel embedded into the wall, eyes narrowed, attention sharp. He had disabled the automated system hours ago, manual override only. Nothing entered this space without him knowing, or so he thought. A soft ping cut through the air. Ariana froze mid-step. What was that? Lucas was already moving. One long stride brought him to the panel. His fingers flew over the screen, jaw tightening as lines of data scrolled rapidly. "Someone just tried to access the building's service elevator," he said. "Not your floor, not yet." Her breath caught. "They're inside the building?" "Yes." The word landed heavy. Lucas turned instantly, positioning himself between her and the open living space. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass walls, dozens of stories below. Beautiful, distant, useless now. "Come here," he said quietly. This wasn't a suggestion. He guided her toward the interior corridor, one hand hovering at her lower back, not touching, but so close she could feel the heat of him. Her body responded before her mind could catch up. Her steps shortened to match his instinctively. 5 years of trust did that. They stopped near the reinforced wall that housed the panic room, hidden, seamless, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. "Stay behind me," he murmured. "I am behind you," she said softly. Too close. He felt it. The warmth of her body, the quickness of her breath, the way her presence pressed into his discipline like a test he had never allowed himself to fail. Another ping, this one closer. Lucas's shoulders went rigid. "They're probing access points, trying to learn your layout." Her fingers curled into the fabric of her blouse. "They know where I live." "They know of you," he corrected. "They don't know me." That was meant to reassure her. It did something else entirely. Ariana swallowed. "Lucas." He turned slightly, just enough to see her face. Fear lived there now, but so did something hotter, something sharper. 5 years of unspoken awareness rising to the surface under pressure. "I won't let them touch you," he said, voice low. "Absolute. Not ever." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. "I know." The building system chimed again, closer still. Lucas moved without thinking. He shifted fully in front of her, one arm lifting instinctively to shield her as he angled his body to block every possible line of approach. His back brushed her front, his heat surrounded her. Solid, immovable. Too much, too intoxicating. Her hands lifted reflexively, fingers hovering near his sides, not daring to touch but desperate for balance, for grounding, for him. He felt it, every inch of it. "Don't," he warned softly. Not because he didn't want her to, but because he wanted it too much. The access attempt failed. The system locked down. Silence returned. Lucas didn't move immediately. Neither did she. The space between their bodies buzzed with awareness. His breath slowed deliberately, controlled with years of training. Hers did not. "That was Too close, she whispered. Yes, he agreed. Slowly, carefully, he stepped away, putting distance between them like a man stepping back from a fire he knew would burn him alive. But the damage was already done. 5 years of restraint had cracked. And whoever was watching from the shadows of the building had just learned something important. The safest place Ariana Vale had was also the most dangerous one of all. The penthouse was quiet except for the soft hum of the city far below. Rain drummed lightly against the glass, streaking the skyline in blurry ribbons of light. Ariana slept fitfully, curled slightly toward the edge of the bed, exhaustion weighing her down. Lucas had been awake longer, sitting in the armchair across the room, scanning every security feed, reviewing the altered routes, the unpredictable schedules. Every step they had taken for her safety now bore fruit. The stalker was confused, frustrated, blind, and that frustration had a smell. Lucas knew it before anyone else. He had been tracking the subtle changes in the building's elevators, entrances, and access points. The intruder had tried multiple times to locate her, only to fail. Every attempt left him angrier, desperate. He stood quietly as a shadow slipped into the hallway, undetected by cameras and sensors. A hand slid a small envelope under the door, quick, precise. Lucas stiffened instantly. The next morning, Ariana stirred first, reaching for her phone. Her gaze fell on the white envelope lying ominously at her door. "Lucas?" Her voice was calm, but tight. He moved swiftly, stepping beside her. "Don't open it yet," he said, hand hovering over the envelope. His eyes were steel. "I need to know," she whispered. He gave her a fraction of a pause, a concession, but his hand covered hers as she reached for it. "I'll read it first." Lucas tore the envelope open. Inside, a single sheet of paper bore shaky, angry handwriting. "He's taken you away from me. You're mine. You can't hide from me, Ariana. Not forever." Lucas's jaw clenched. He read it again, then another time. The anger radiating from the stalker was palpable, almost physical. He could feel the obsession, the rage, the loss of control that the man now felt. "He's livid," Lucas said quietly. "Because of the route changes. Because of everything we did to keep you hidden. He can't see you anymore, can't track you, can't touch you, and it's driving him crazy." Ariana's stomach twisted, but not entirely from fear. She looked at Lucas, his presence solid and unshakable, and felt something else. Heat, magnetic, impossible. "So he's aware you're protecting me?" "Yes," Lucas said, voice low, absolute. "And he's furious about it." She swallowed. I I can't believe someone would—" Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. He already knew what she was thinking. 5 years of observing her had trained him to understand the flickers in her eyes, the subtle tremor in her hands, the tension coiling in her shoulders. "This changes things," he said, moving closer. His presence was impossible to ignore. Tall, sculpted, protective, and undeniably charged. Ariana's pulse thrummed at the awareness of him so near, so watchful, so impossibly controlling. The stalker's threat was real, but it paled in comparison to the storm simmering between her and Lucas. 5 years of silent restraint, now tested by danger. Lucas set the note aside carefully, placing a hand near hers, not touching, yet close enough for her to feel the heat radiating from him. "I won't let him get to you," he said. "Not ever, not while I'm here." She nodded, and for the first time she realized just how much she had come to depend on him, not just for protection, but for the way he made her feel secure, alive, and dangerously aware of everything between them. Outside, the stalker seethed somewhere in the dark, impotent. Inside, the penthouse held a different kind of fire, a tension that neither danger nor distance could ever cool, and both of them knew, silently, that the game had just escalated. Lucas Kane had made the decision hours before Ariana had even considered it. "Work from home for a few days," he had said, voice calm, absolute. "It minimizes your exposure. We reduce the risk." Ariana had stiffened, frustration flickering across her features. "I can't just stop going to the office. I run an empire, Lucas." "You run it," he said, gaze sharp, unwavering. "I make sure you live to keep running it." After a long pause, she had reluctantly agreed. "Fine. A few days. but I'm not going to be a prisoner. Those days passed slowly. Every alert, every unusual access attempt, every shadow lingering too long in the building's camera feeds stoked the stalker's rage. He couldn't see her. He couldn't reach her. And that anger grew, dark, erratic, violent. By the fourth day, the first opportunity outside presented itself. Lucas had planned it carefully, mapping a route only he could navigate safely. Ariana walked beside him, heels clicking on the marble floor of the building lobby, heart racing, not from exertion, but from the awareness of his presence so close, so controlled, so protective. Then it happened. The stalker stepped from a side entrance, gun raised, eyes wild, rage practically radiating off him. "Step aside, Kane," he yelled. "She's mine!" Ariana froze, panic seizing her chest. Lucas moved instantly, faster than thought. The world narrowed. He stepped in front of her, body a shield, hand gripping hers for balance. The first shot rang out. Pain blossomed in his shoulder, hot and immediate. He didn't cry out. He didn't flinch beyond instinctive protection. He only pushed Ariana further back, positioning her behind him. "Run!" he shouted, voice gritted, controlled. The second shot was the last the stalker fired. Building security, trained and ready, had arrived moments earlier. They fired in return. The stalker crumpled, hitting the floor, gun clattering across the marble. Ariana screamed, rushing forward as Lucas sagged slightly, the pain in his shoulder sharp but contained. She pressed her hands against his chest, heart hammering, breath ragged. You took the bullet," she whispered, panic and disbelief colliding. "I've done this before," he said, voice strained but steady. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Her fingers clutched at him, suddenly aware of just how tall, strong, and impossibly solid he was. The heat radiating from him was more than physical. It was protective, intimate, dangerous. She could feel every line of muscle, every subtle shift of balance, every disciplined restraint he maintained even through pain. "Lucas?" she breathed, eyes wide. "I'm fine," he said, though the faintest tremor of strain ran through his arm. "Security has him. You're safe." Her relief was almost unbearable. She pressed herself against him, a mix of gratitude, fear, and something far deeper stirring between them. Her heartbeat hammered against his chest, her pulse sinking with the strength he radiated. He held her close, carefully, protectively, though still conscious of every movement, every inch of contact. 5 years, Ariana, he murmured quietly. "I've been watching, waiting, protecting. I've always been here. Always." Her breath hitched. The weight of everything, the danger, the fear, the closeness, the undeniable tension built over years, pressed down on her. She didn't pull away. She couldn't. And for the first time, Lucas allowed himself to relax slightly in her presence, knowing that she was safe, for now, but also knowing something else. The desire that had simmered silently between them for years was now impossible to ignore. Outside, the city went on, oblivious. Inside, the penthouse was a sanctuary, safe, heated, and charged with years of restrained longing finally coming to the surface. The world felt unbearably still. Ariana sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, hands clasped tightly in her lap, heart hammering in her chest. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly above her, casting shadows that felt like threats. She hadn't noticed the cold, hadn't noticed the hours slipping past. All she could feel was the absence of Lucas Kane beside her. 5 years she had relied on him. 5 years he had always been the constant, the shadow that made her feel untouchable. And now, he was hurt. Because of her. She had barely left the penthouse after the stalker was neutralized. Security had insisted she stay back, wait, while they ensured Lucas was stabilized. But waiting was torture. Minutes stretched into hours. Every footstep in the hallway, every muffled voice behind the doors, made her flinch. Her phone had been useless. Calls unanswered, texts unread. She didn't care about anything except him. Finally, a nurse appeared, clipboard in hand, eyes sympathetic. "Ms. Vale?" "Yes," she breathed, barely able to speak. "Dr. Chen will see you in a moment. He says he has an update." Ariana's knees weakened. Her hands shook violently. The air seemed too thick, too heavy. She pressed both hands to her face, inhaling sharply, trying to steady herself. And then, darkness. The world tipped sideways. The room tilted. Her knees gave way beneath her. The clipboard slipped from the nurse's hands with a clatter. Her last thought before everything went black was Lucas, injured, waiting, and unaware she might not be strong enough to face it. Ariana woke to voices, a soft, steady presence, and the rhythmic beeping of monitors. "Ms. Vale, you fainted. Are you all right?" Her eyelids fluttered open to the sight of Dr. Chen, concern etched into his face, and beside him, Lucas. Lucas Kane. Injured but awake. Bandages covered his shoulder. His eyes were sharp, intense, but softened immediately when they landed on her. "Ariana," he said, voice rough but steady, leaning slightly forward. "Don't scare me like that." Tears blurred her vision. She tried to speak, to move toward him, but her body trembled uncontrollably. He was there, alive, protected, and yet, so fragile. He reached out carefully, cupping her cheek with one hand. The warmth of him, the solid strength, the familiar presence, it grounded her instantly. "I'm okay," he said quietly. "I took a bullet. That's it. I'm alive. And you?" His gaze softened. "You need to breathe." She pressed herself closer, relief crashing through her. The fear, the adrenaline, the 5 years of silent longing, all of it collided into a single, overwhelming moment. Lucas, injured but unshakable in his protection, held her. And Ariana, exhausted, terrified, and desperate, finally let herself lean into him. 5 years of tension, desire, and trust condensed into one heartbeat, one embrace, one moment. Outside, the city went on, oblivious. Inside the hospital room, time had stopped, and for the first time, Ariana realized she didn't just need him to protect her. She needed him, just him as a man. A few days later, the penthouse smelled of her favorite candles and the faint trace of his cologne. Lucas stepped through the door, still pale from the hospital ordeal. She froze. Lucas Kane was there, standing like a magnificent sculpture, shoulder bandaged, but posture impossibly composed. The city lights outside painted his face in sharp, captivating angles. Tall, sculpted, impossibly perfect. "Lucas," she breathed, the word barely escaping. He dropped the faint smile he had been holding for professionalism's sake. "Ariana," he said softly, voice low, carrying all the weight of 5 years of restraint. Before she could think, before she could stop herself, she closed the distance between them. Her hands pressed against his chest, feeling the warmth, the hard planes of muscle, the steady beat beneath her palms. Her body finally let go of the fear, the exhaustion, the worry, and all the pent-up desire she had kept hidden. Lucas froze just for a heartbeat. Then, impossibly fast, his arms wrapped around her, pulling her flush against him. The heat radiated from his body, strong and magnetic, controlled yet wild with unspoken longing. "You're here," she whispered against his chest, voice trembling. "You're safe. I'm so glad you're safe." "I'm here," he murmured, nuzzling her hair briefly, careful not to overstep. But every brush, every subtle movement carried the weight of restrained desire. "And you are finally safe." Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, memorizing it, testing it, kneading it. Lucas's hands stayed firm on her waist, keeping her close but steady, savoring the warmth of her body pressed against his. The tension of years, the fear of the stalker, the stolen glances, the shared rides, the close calls, they all collided into this moment. "I missed you," she admitted, voice barely audible. Lucas's lips brushed the side of her temple, then her jaw, teasing, testing, and finally, he let the restraint falter. One hand lifted, tilting her face toward his. The heat between them was undeniable, the longing impossible to ignore. "I've been here all along," he murmured, pointing at her heart that was beating so fast, lips grazing hers, waiting for this. The kiss started soft, tentative, testing, but quickly deepened. His bandaged shoulder pressed lightly against her, his strength grounding her as she clung to him. The penthouse, the city, the danger outside, it all disappeared. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. His hands roamed over her back, memorizing curves, memorizing her, tasting the heat that had been denied for too long. Every second, every inch, burned with desire, pent up for 5 years. They broke apart briefly, just enough to catch their breath, foreheads resting together, hearts hammering in sync. "You're mine," she whispered, low and possessive, voice thick with desire and relief. "I am all yours," he breathed back, shivering against her. "Always." Lucas's lips captured hers again, slower this time, savoring, claiming, exploring. Every kiss, every touch, every heated brush of skin was an unspoken promise, safety, protection, and the passion that had been waiting in the shadows for years. The penthouse lights dimmed further as they finally let themselves fall into the heat, the longing, the need they had kept locked away. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious. Inside, nothing existed except them, the warmth and the fire that had finally been allowed to blaze. 5 years of restraint, of silent protection, of longing suppressed, finally found release. And neither of them would ever let it go again. The penthouse was quiet in a way that felt like peace. Rain had stopped overnight, leaving the city glistening under the early morning sun. Light spilled through the windows, illuminating the space where Ariana and Lucas now sat together, still entwined on the couch. Her head rested on his chest, fingers tracing the hard lines of his arm. His other hand absent-mindedly threaded through her hair, careful, protective, yet lingering in a way that made her pulse quicken. "I can't believe we're finally just like this," she murmured, eyes half closed, lips brushing against his chest. Lucas's lips curved into a small, almost shy smile. "I've waited a long time for this," he said. His voice was soft, intimate, a contrast to the hard, commanding tone he wore in the world outside. 5 years, Ariana. Watching, protecting, wanting. "I know," she whispered. "And I've known too. I was too proud to admit it." He shifted slightly, pressing a tender kiss to the top of her head. "You don't have to be proud anymore. Not with me. Not ever." The memory of the stalker, the hospital, the fear, it all felt distant now, replaced by a heat that was safe, comforting, and exhilarating. Ariana smiled, feeling the weight of years of tension and danger melt away in the warmth of his presence. "I never want to be apart from you again," she admitted softly. Lucas's fingers traced her jaw, tilting her face toward his. "Then we won't be. I won't allow it. Not now. Not ever." She leaned up, closing the distance between them, and their lips met in a slow, lingering kiss, gentle yet charged, a promise of everything that had been pent up for years. Every touch, every brush, every whispered word was a vow: protection, passion, and presence. Pulling back just slightly, he rested his forehead against hers. "We have all the time now," he said. "No shadows, no threats, just us." Ariana smiled, eyes glistening. "Us," she echoed. The city continued to hum outside, oblivious to the small universe that had formed high above it. Inside they were safe, whole, and finally able to explore the depth of what had always existed between them. Lucas tightened his arms around her, and she pressed closer, their bodies sinking naturally. There was no rush, no need to hold back. Just years of trust, love, and longing finding its way freely at last. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ariana Vale allowed herself to simply be, safe, loved, and in the arms of the one man who had always known her better than anyone else ever could. Weeks had passed since the night of the stalker, the bullet, and the hospital. The penthouse was quiet now, not tense, not fearful, but alive with warmth, laughter, and the promise of a life finally free from danger. Ariana leaned against the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, as Lucas entered from the balcony, sunlight catching his sculpted features. His shoulder had healed almost completely, but she still found herself tracing it with her eyes, remembering how he had shielded her without a second thought. "You're still staring," he said, a teasing lilt in his voice. "I'm just appreciating the view," she replied, smiling, a flush rising to her cheeks. Lucas grinned. closing the distance between them in long, confident strides. "The view looks better when it's shared," he said, sliding his hands around her waist and pulling her close. Her back pressed to his chest, and she shivered, half from desire, half from the comforting security of him. They kissed, slow and deliberate, tasting the years of restraint and longing that had finally erupted in a shared, undeniable fire. Hands roamed freely now, not constrained by danger or professionalism, every touch charged with both passion and intimacy. Breaking the kiss, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "We have a future now," he murmured. "No shadows, no threats, just us. And I intend to make every day count." Ariana smiled, heart full. "A future together, officially," she teased, voice low, eyes sparkling. "No more secrets, no more games, just us." He chuckled, nuzzling her hair. "We'll take it one day at a time, but I promise, every day will be unforgettable." Their life together unfolded like a dream. Lucas remained her shadow, her protector, her lover, but now fully, freely, without restraint. She began to see the possibilities: travel together, escaping the city occasionally to explore hidden beaches and secluded resorts. Business trips no longer stressful, because Lucas would always be at her side. Quiet mornings in the penthouse, wrapped in each other, sharing laughter and desire before the world intruded. Shared ambitions. He had learned everything about her life, and now he wanted to build their future together, not just protect it. And the passion? It remained electric, alive, unrestrained, and mutual. No more stolen glances or fleeting touches. Now, every touch, every kiss, every caress was intentional, deep, and thoroughly theirs. Ariana tilted her head, lips brushing against his shoulder. "We're really doing this, huh?" Lucas's hand slid down to cup her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Yes," he said firmly. "Every day. Together. Forever." She smiled, heart racing, then laughed softly. "Forever sounds perfect." He kissed her then, deep and lingering, and the city outside could keep its secrets. Up here, above the lights and the chaos, they had everything they'd ever wanted: safety, passion, trust, and a future together that was finally, entirely their own. And for the first time, Ariana Vale didn't have to be invincible. She could simply be loved, fully, by the one man who had always known her best. Thank you for following our story up to this point. If you wish our CEO and her bodyguard all the best in their romance, please like, share, and comment as we wait to find out what the future holds for them. Will society permit their different societal standing? Comment below your thoughts.